My name is Libor Vance. I'm the senior product designer on the ecosystem in the ecosystem group, which falls under the enablement stage group. And so we're a fairly new group. So I'm not gonna. And I'm fairly new to the group as well. So I don't really have. So this UX showcase is not going to be that much about like necessarily finished work, since nothing that we've worked on yet is in production. So it's going to be more about, just an intro to, what the ecosystem team is all about. And then I'm going to show some of the current things that we're kind of work in progress and are some of the challenges that we're working through. And then I'm going to highlight some of the like more future work that we're thinking through. All right, so with that, an intro to our team. So our team is comprised of 2 backend engineers, an engineering manager, a front-end engineer, senior product manager, and then a researcher, and 1 product designer. All right, so the vision for the ecosystem team is basically to support seamless integration between GitLab and other third-party products and services, basically expanding GitLab's market opportunities by empowering developers to contribute. So we have a really great write-up for this. If you're interested in learning more about this, you can see this, just click the link on our handbook there, and we have a good write-up about the direction for our stage group. All right, so the mission for the ecosystem team is we're basically responsible for the designing and building and maintaining of the GitLab API. That's also expanding the API and its functionality. It's also, focusing on integration between, like, obviously GitLab and other key external products. We also focus on the documentation and instructions and just best practice guides for how to use our APIs. And then just best practice for external contributors looking to develop their own integrations within the GitLab platform. All right, so again, just to reiterate, our focuses at the ecosystem are on integrations, from simple ones like Slack notifications for a project to like more deeper complex integrations like with Atlassian's Jira. And then we also focus on, the API and SDK for developers trying to build tools specifically on the GitLab platform. All right. So yeah, now I'll dive into some, the current state and kind of some of the open things that we're working on or work in progress. So the first, so again, just to say, reiterate that, we're a fairly new team, so we don't have like a lot of the maturity levels defined yet. So we're in the process of creating scorecards, the UX scorecards, and putting together some discovery and research into our user groups, and then just getting ready to iterate on that. So hopefully with this, with having a UX scorecard complete, we could develop some kind of good baseline and kind of understanding of where we're at and kind of where we need to move forward and where we need to grow. So this first example of what we're working on, it's like a work in progress, is our overall name nomenclature. So for example, in this example, like, when you refer to, or when we refer to like an integration or webhook in the platform, it's different depending on what level you are within the product. So for example, if you're an admin on the instance level, or you're at the group level, or you're at the project level, those names are kind of change and are all over the place. So one thing we're working through that we have a couple of issues created for is just standardizing that naming convention and making it simpler and more consistent. The next thing, there are a lot of different flows in the app that can be either like improved or optimized on. So here's one example, and I'll just share my screen so you could. It's just going to be easier just to show it. So for example, right now I'm on the integrations page, and I'm going to scroll down to find my Jenkins, and I'm going to set up Jenkins integration. So right now I'll put in my information here, settings, and I'll have this button to test whether or not the settings worked. So if I click that, as it's thinking, as the user, I don't really know what happened. I was kind of taken out of my context right away. So I kind of assumed that I would stay on that page and then I would, the form would validate and check whether it worked or not. Instead, I was taken, back to the integrations list page. So now as a user, it's a little frustrating. I have to go back down, find where I even was, what I was doing, even go back to that integration. And now I could see that it actually worked. And I see that the recent delivery worked here. So there's a lot of little frustrating things that we're addressing right now within the integrations. So let me just go back to that. So that was that example. I also have a little GIF of that same interaction here, if you're all curious to revisit that. Next thing is, there's a lot we want to learn and a lot of questions that we're seeking answers to. So I'm really excited to be working with Eileen on this. So our goal is to create some kind of process where, we have an ongoing way of collecting feedback and kind of sharing that back into our team. So one high level question on the right there is, how will we make GitLab's integrations easier for developers? That's kind of a high level question that kind of can be broken down in a lot of little sub questions. So that's where we are with research. So it's still in the planning phase there. So next, I wanted to showcase or talk about, kind of some future work and where we're moving to down the line. And this future work really aligns well with one of the kind of main product themes, which is, being enterprise ready or enterprise readiness. So moving down, so here's one example. I'll just talk through this scenario here. So there's, imagine that I'm like a systems administrator and I was tasked with moving, our company over to GitLab. And let's say, there's a lot of companies out there that have like more than thousands of Jira projects. So let's imagine that you're a systems administrator and you have 20,000 Jira projects that you want to move over to GitLab. So now then imagine that you'd have to do all that manually, so thankfully we do have this concept of service templates that kind of can help you with that. So you could, what that does is if you're an administrator of the account, you could set up a service template, for example, for Jira, and you input the settings. So every new project that you create that will be created on that instance, will inherit those settings. That works well, but the problem is, so now imagine that, you have older projects that you need to update the settings for, or you need to update a URL for now 20,000, for example, different projects. That becomes a problem because we don't have the concept of like pushing down newer settings or updating settings, and vice versa. If you're on the project level and you only have permissions for that project, maybe you can't. You might be able to overwrite those settings, and so we want to be able to make it so that if you're an administrator, you have more control and more granular control over these. So, for example, being able to lock down the project settings. So the projects that inherit them, and if you only have access to that a smaller project or group, you might not be able to overwrite certain settings. Or if you do overwrite them, we want to notify the administrator that they've been overwritten. So there's a lot of work and planning that we're thinking about, in this space. So we have an epic setup for this. A next thing that we're thinking about is what is the GitLab developer experience? So we have a lot of influences that we've looked at, and like for Stripe, Twilio, Salesforce, and a bunch of others that have great developer experiences. So we're working on thinking about what's the ideal GitLab experience. And with that, that's all I have really to share for you for this UX showcase. But I'm very excited to share some more concrete, specific work that's going to be in production for our next UX showcase. All right. Any questions for anyone?
I have a quick question. Does the work on the API include GraphQL work as well?
Funny you bring that up. We were just actually talking about that at a meeting earlier. So I don't know where we're at with that, but I know there's a team right now, I think is planned, that's also working on GraphQL. So we need to figure out how we're going to either work together or who's going to kind of own that. But yeah, no, I don't have any specific answers for you on that.
Cool, thanks.